What follows is a comprehensive list of my personal knowledge about Saturday Night Live cast member Pete Davidson. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know when I post a new video. Now let's get started. Pete Davidson stars in the latest comedy drama from Judd Apatow, The King of Staten Island. The film is a semi-autobiographical film in which Davidson plays Scott, the son of a New York City firefighter who perished in a hotel fire. Interestingly enough, Pete Davidson's actual father was named Scott, and he sadly died in the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001. His father's death profoundly impacted Davidson's childhood and subsequent career. The film takes its time covering much of this ground and is dedicated to his father's memory. And in case you're wondering, yes, this movie does take place almost entirely in New York City's least interesting borough. Don't at me about it. I lived in New York for 4 years, and I'm not wrong about this. This is a Judd Apatow movie through and through, with moving and appropriately funny performances from Davidson himself, Marisa Tomei, and Bill Burr. Like Apatow's other works, there are some quality contributions from some of the side characters, great lengthy dialogue exchanges, and just a bit too much running time for its own good. Davidson is a bit of a revelation here. As someone who hasn't watched Saturday Night Live in a decade or so, I was impressed with Davidson playing himself. It's strange to see someone playing themselves in a movie about them, but here we are. Scott is a 24-year-old loser who smokes pot all day with his loser friends while dreaming of opening his own tattoo restaurant. I'm just going to assume that's something that Davidson legitimately wanted to do at some point. As a result of Scott's misdeeds, Bill Burr's Ray, who is also a New York City firefighter, is introduced to Scott's widowed mother Margie, played by Marisa Tomei. They begin a relationship on the down low, and thus begins the plot of our movie. Scott has misgivings about Ray has misgivings about Scott, family drama commences, and we get to see a thorough look at what has created the monster that is our protagonist. The movie doesn't shy away from issues like drug use, grief, or mental illness. In fact, all of these elements have contributed directly to Scott's inability to secure a job, pay rent, or engage in any meaningful relationships. One of those three elements is dealt with extensively, and based on what I've told you about Davidson's childhood, you can probably figure out which one that is. Contrast this with Scott's well-adjusted sister who's going off to college, and it's clear that Scott really ought to get his life together. Tomei is reliable as Margie, and this is a role that she could play in her sleep. She does a great job desperately trying to balance her relationships with her son and with her new love interest. Comedian Bill Burr, sporting one of the absolutely best mustaches in the history of mustaches, stole the show for me. Nobody does a better job yelling at people, which Burr certainly gets to do in this movie, but he also brings his own set of failures and demons to the film as the closest thing Scott will ever get to anything resembling a father figure. A few of the secondary characters that need some shout-outs. Scott's stoner buddies are just as hilarious as you would expect from an Apatow movie. If you've seen literally any other flick of his, you will enjoy these guys. Steve Buscemi plays the eldest of Roy's fire crew. Fun fact, Steve Buscemi was a New York City firefighter himself for 4 years and actually went down to ground zero after 9/11 to help dig through the rubble and aid in the rescue effort. Shout out to Steve Buscemi because that guy is amazing. Judd Apatow tends to be the master of taking a very serious subject, injecting a massive dose of humor, bringing together all the right actors, and then juggling the material with just the right amount of gravitas. He does just that with The King of Staten Island. Now, one of the drawbacks to Apatow's filmmaking is that sometimes he just cannot contain himself. This movie is about 15 to 20 minutes too long. Many of the scenes drag out way too much, and Apatow gets lost in the weeds with what feels like too many side details. Sometimes less is more, and that's certainly the case here. The long running time doesn't wipe out the good things that the film does, but it certainly doesn't assuage any of the criticism that has been leveled at Apatow for a long time. I just want to see a hard stop, 2-hour Apatow movie. I believe in you, Judd. You can do this. The King of Staten Island is a solid comedy with great performances that takes a long look at how our experiences growing up shape the rest of our lives and impact those around us. Thank you so much for watching. My goal is to get to 100 subscribers right here on YouTube, so if you enjoyed this review, click on that red button. You can also like or share the video because that engagement will help the channel grow too. And let me know what you think of the King of Staten Island down in the comments, and I will see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.